In 2011, we published a paper on the dreams of soldiers in war zones. What do you suppose they dreamed about? Well, the answer might surprise you. In 2011, Dr. Rob Wyatt, Dr. Mike Ignatowski, and myself published a paper on the dreams of soldiers in combat zones. This was during the Afghanistan War. Dr. Ignatowski and myself were both resident physicians or doctors in training, and we were working with Dr. Rob Wyatt, who actually had been there and in theater. And while he was there, he began collecting the dreams that soldiers would report to him when they would come to him with difficulties. And this encompassed about 500 different patient contacts over 7 months. Now, he didn't initially plan or set out to do this, but they kept reporting the same kinds of dreams, and he had an interest in dreams. And when he came back, he started talking to us about it, and we decided to put this paper together. And some very striking similarities emerged in the dreams that reported from these soldiers that were in the combat zones overseas. So today's video we're going to talk about is going to be the first of 3. And in this one we're going to talk about one of the most commonly reported types of dreams that we saw. And it's typically of people who were near combat but weren't actually in combat. So all the soldiers that reported dreams to Dr. Wyatt were in very restrictive environments. They were under the constant threat of mortars and IEDs, and it's a very high stress situation for them. So when they came to Dr. Wyatt with symptoms of mental illness, typically post-traumatic stress type symptoms or acute stress disordered symptoms, they would oftentimes report dreams to him because he was interested in it, and he asked them about it. So here's one of the commonly reported dreams that he collected while he was over there. And this was from people who were not in actual firefights or in combat zones, but just near them and hearing the mortar fire or having the threat of attack. In this dream, the dreamer would say something like, I'm standing behind my house and I know my family is behind me, but I can't see them. And they aren't responding to my yelling. I know they're in danger. There's animals, dangerous animals, that are coming at us. Animals reported by the soldiers would range from things like wolves to snakes to alligators, bears, and the dreamer would be there trying to stop them. And I say he because most of the soldiers that reported these types of dreams were male at that time, and I believe now it's still very heavily weighted towards males versus females. Anyway, so the animals are coming at the family, and he can't stop them. He's trying to stop them, but for every one that he grabs, 2 more run past him. I know my family is dying. There's nothing I can do about it, and I wake up freaking out. I'm very desperate to call them. And this was the dream that commonly was reported to Dr. Wyatt by soldiers in that particular situation. So let's take a look at the imagery of this dream. Now, all 3 of us had come together based on our interest in Carl Jung's Analytical Psychology, which is a type of psychodynamic therapy which is very focused on dream and dream content, like many psychodynamic theories. So it's just one of many ways to look at this. But let's start with the animals. So in these dreams, again, sticking to the image, following the principles that we talked about earlier in other videos, they're predatory animals. They're snakes, they're alligators, they're wolves, they're big, dangerous animals that can do damage, that can kill you. Bears. So what do we think of these? Well, it's interesting that the family is being threatened by animals rather than guns and bombs, which is what the soldiers actually experienced danger from. So it makes me wonder, why animals versus more modern weaponry? And the answer, I think, to that is that it's a more primordial type of danger. It's something that humans have encountered over thousands of years and had danger to. And it's a way of expressing the situation that the dreamer is in. Remember the dream hack? It's as if you're dealing with these predatory animals. It's as if you're in this primordial situation where it's just you versus nature. And here the animals are coming to try to attack the family. So again, the dreamer is in this very primordial situation where he's having to fend off animals from destroying his family. So he's in this protector role and he's being overwhelmed. Now, of course, the very interesting thing about this is that none of these soldiers encountered bears and snakes and wolves in theater. So it's always interesting to look at how is it different from what they're actually experiencing, because the psyche will put together a dream using the imagery that you've experienced typically, but it'll use it in ways that you have never experienced literally. It puts it together in a particular way to convey the meaning of what you're experiencing. So this dream is saying that when you're in theater, when you're under the threat of bombs and guns and whatnot, it's not just you, but your whole family. It's as if they're all under attack by vicious animals that can tear you apart on a very personal level. And so it's evoking all of these primordial defenses, emotional defense systems that we have in place that have been there since before Homo sapiens, things that are common to all mammals, like fear and rage and all that sort of thing. So now the ending is, of course, also important. And the ending here is that the animals got past them and the family is in danger. But note that the family was never seen dead in these, typically. It was rather, I'm afraid that they will get destroyed. I'm afraid they will get killed. So there's an ambiguity about the ending. And that reflects the situation that they're in. And it reflects it really, really nicely. It's terrifying. So another thing to think about too is the house. Typically there's a house in these dreams, and the dreamer is outside the house defending against the animals. Okay, so that's another really important critical detail that we don't want to overlook. If it was in the house, then that would be a slightly different interpretation, because the houses are almost always a reflection of our everyday typical attitude and our normal day-to-day way of interacting with the world. If you're outside the house, and the house is there to be compared to, then it means that you are outside of that norm, which makes sense. But it is a very vivid way to express that particular situation that they're in. They're outside the house. They're outside the norm. And there's a flood of dangerous animals coming in to get into the house. So not only is it reflective of the danger that they're feeling, it also reflects really well the way that their emotions are coming forth. All those defenses and those acute stress reactions are flooding the house. They're coming in to invade, and that's a really vivid way to describe that the dream avails itself of. So that's the first type of dream that we ran into, and that was commonly reported by soldiers who had not actually been in combat themselves, but were in the constant threat of combat. Their emotions were kicked in, their defenses were kicked into high gear, and it was as if these animals, which are good representations of strong instinctive forces within the psyche, brought on by external circumstances. And it was a really good way to depict that. But what about soldiers who had actually been in combat, those who had actually killed people? Well, they had a slightly different type of dream. And in the next video, we're going to get into that one. We're going to go into what kinds of dreams that soldiers who had confirmed kills had, and it was very different. So hopefully you'll find this interesting and you'll join us for the next video. And until then, we'll see you.